I knew the day was about to go sideways the moment I heard her shriek. 911, there's a gang of dangerous men in my neighbor's backyard. And by gang, she meant me, standing in my own yard, drinking a beer, with 3 of my closest friends. What our dear HOA president Linda Carver, self-appointed guardian of Maple Ridge Estates, didn't know was that the 4 aggressive criminals she was breathlessly describing to the dispatcher were all off-duty cops, including me. One minute we were debating whether Die Hard counts as a Christmas movie. The next minute, Linda was trespassing through my gate, pointing at us like she'd uncovered a cartel operation, and dialing 911 with the confidence of someone who had never been wrong in her entire life. By the time the patrol car rolled up, lights flashing across my fence, I realized this wasn't going to be a funny misunderstanding. It was the opening shot of a war I never asked for, one that nearly cost me my career, my reputation, and my peace. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is there, and if you've ever dealt with a wild HOA neighbor, hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. It really had been the perfect Saturday, one of those rare, golden days that feel borrowed from a better life, the kind of day you spend all week daydreaming about but never actually get. The sun was warm but not oppressive. The air smelled like cut grass and charcoal, and for the first time in months, all 4 of us, me, Tyler, Ramon, and Chris, had synced days off. That alone felt like a miracle. Getting 4 cops on the same schedule? Nearly impossible. I'd spent years scraping and saving for this house on Maple Ridge Lane, and every time I stepped into the backyard, it felt unreal. The big oak tree casting wide, lazy shadows, the wooden fence enclosing my little sanctuary, a grill that had seen more hot dogs than actual cooking, but it was mine. My first real home after 15 years of cramped apartments and roommates who treated cleaning supplies like mythical artifacts. Chris was already in rare form, cracking jokes between sips of his beer. He was the tech guy, the kind of cop you wanted when someone's laptop held more secrets than a suspect's mouth. Ramon sat back, peeling the label from his bottle like he always did when he was relaxed. Strategic, calm, always analyzing. And then there was Tyler, tall, broad, gym-sculpted, intimidating until you heard him laugh. To strangers he was a tank. To us he was a teddy bear with a bad temper that only appeared when someone truly deserved it. We'd thrown a pile of burgers on the grill, argued about movies, talked trash about each other's terrible aim during last month's qualifications, and joked like we hadn't done in far too long. It was one of those rare moments when I wasn't Officer Reed, I was just Marcus, a guy with a cold beer and good friends. But even during perfect days, there's a moment almost imperceptible when the air shifts, a prickle down the back of your neck, a whisper in the part of your brain trained by years on the job. It's the same instinct that makes you slow your patrol car at 2 a.m. because something feels off in a parking lot. Even if you can't immediately pinpoint what, that instinct quietly tapped me on the shoulder. At first, I brushed it off. A bird, maybe, a neighbor walking by, nothing unusual. But then I saw Ramon narrow his eyes slightly, not enough to alarm anyone else, but enough for me to notice. Tyler and Chris were still arguing loudly about whether the Yankees were washed this season. Oblivious to everything except their own nonsense, I let my gaze drift casually toward the fence line. It was subtle, just a flicker of movement, a sweep of blonde hair dipping below the wooden slats. Someone was watching us. Now, look, I get it, neighbors peek. People are curious. But there's a big difference between glancing out your kitchen window and full-on surveillance mode. I turned back to the guys, deciding not to ruin the vibe. If it was someone being nosy, it wasn't the first time. And if it was someone being rude, well, also not the first time. But the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger. The breeze carried the faint rustle of leaves overhead. The grill popped softly as grease dripped into the fire. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower hummed. It was peaceful, familiar, safe, and yet, anyone else feel like we've got eyes on us? I finally murmured. Ramon just nodded once. Yep, that was enough for me. I didn't stand or react dramatically. I didn't want to escalate a situation that might not even exist. But my senses sharpened in that slow, steady way you never really lose after enough years in uniform. Then it happened. The gate latch on the side of my yard rattled. Barely a second later, the gate creaked open. slow but deliberate, and stepping inside my yard like she owned the land beneath her shoes, was the woman I had only glimpsed earlier. She was maybe 5'4", maybe older than she wanted people to know. Bright blonde hair pulled into a bun so tight I was shocked she could blink. A pink velour tracksuit that looked like it had been bought 2 sizes ago but forced into service anyway. And a posture so rigid she resembled a drill sergeant who had lost her whistle but not her authority issues. She planted her feet a good 20 feet away from us, hands on hips, chin up like she was about to issue citations for simply existing incorrectly. The conversation died instantly. 4 grown men, 4 trained police officers, fell silent in our own backyard. I tried to be the responsible adult. Hello, can we help you?" I asked. Her eyes didn't soften. They sharpened, like she was scanning for violations only she could see. Her glare danced over our beers, our clothes, our faces assessing, condemning. "I knew it," she hissed. "I heard you people from my kitchen. Loud music, rude language. Carrying on like this is some kind of party." Chris blinked. "We don't even have music on." Ramon stepped in with that smooth negotiator voice of his. "Ma'am, we're just talking. It's a quiet afternoon. Nothing illegal happening here." She whipped toward him so fast I thought she might sprain something. "Don't you lie to me," she snapped. "I know what kind of people you are." That one landed heavy. We all felt it. Years on the job teach you to hear the things people don't say, and she wasn't hiding the subtext. Her tone dripped with prejudice, a familiar, ugly kind. Tyler stood so quickly, his chair scraped the patio, his jaw tightened. I raised my hand subtly, signaling him to stay calm. The last thing we needed was to match her energy. "Ma'am," I said, voice steady but firm, "you're on private property, my property. You need to leave." A normal human being would have realized they'd crossed a line. She wasn't a normal human being. "This neighborhood has rules," she barked. "Standards. We don't allow gatherings like this." She waved broadly at us. "The grill, the cooler, the chairs, all of it," Chris muttered. "It's called a barbecue, ma'am. People do it. It's legal." "Wrong move." She spun on him, eyes bulging. "Don't you get smart with me, hoodlum?" That word lit the fuse. Tyler took a step forward. "Hoodlum. You walk into his yard and call us. Ty," I warned quietly. He inhaled sharply and stepped back. Barely. I turned back to her. "This is your last warning. Leave, now." Her expression shifted just for a moment. Something like calculation slid behind her eyes. Then her mouth curled into the smuggest smirk I had ever seen. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and declared, with triumphant glee, "I'm calling the police. We'll see who's right when they get here." She began pacing across my lawn fake crying into the phone, as she told the dispatcher a masterpiece of fiction about aggressive men, threats, and fear for my life. And as the distant wail of sirens drifted toward Maple Ridge Lane, all I could think was, she has no idea who she's messing with. The sirens grew louder, crawling up Maple Ridge Lane like a slow-moving storm, their echo bouncing off the quiet houses that lined the street. There's a strange, almost surreal feeling that settles in your stomach when you hear police responding to a call about you. Even when you know without an ounce of doubt that you've done nothing wrong, training kicks in, your pulse quickens, your body brace. Your mind runs through scenarios. It's instinct, muscle memory forged from years of walking into the unknown. Linda, meanwhile, was giving a performance worthy of a daytime drama award. She paced in frantic little circles, one hand on her chest as she wailed into the phone. "Yes, they're still here. They're staring at me. I'm terrified. Oh, please hurry. I don't feel safe." She kept glancing at us between fake sobs, making sure her imaginary danger was being properly communicated. Tyler was pacing too, but for very different reasons. He muttered under his breath, fists clenched tight enough to crack stone. Chris looked like a man trying to comprehend a glitch in the universe. Ramon was the only one sitting perfectly still, elbows on knees, hands clasped, the way he did when planning 10 moves ahead. "All right," Ramon said quietly. "When they get here, only Marcus talks. That's the rule." Tyler agreed reluctantly, as long as they're smart enough to actually listen. The sirens cut off, car doors slammed, Linda straightened, wiping imaginary tears from her cheeks, transforming from frantic victim to righteous crusader gearing up for her noble moment. She hurried to the gate just as two police officers entered the backyard. One, a younger recruit, maybe mid-20s, his hand hovering near his holster, the way new officers do when they're trying to project seriousness. The other, older, seasoned, beard flecked with gray, Sergeant Daniel Miller. I recognized him immediately. Not close friends, but close enough. Same precinct building, same training seminars, same citywide briefings. One of those cops you nod to in the hallway. Always calm, always steady. His eyes swept the yard with practiced precision. He saw the grill, the folding chairs, the half-empty cooler, and us four men sitting calmly, not remotely matching the breathless alarm coming from the woman practically shoving herself at him. "What's the situation here, ma'am?" Miller asked. "And oh, did she deliver? Officer, thank God you're here," she gasped, jabbing her finger toward us. These men appeared out of nowhere. They were drinking excessively, yelling, using foul language. I came over to ask them to please quiet down, and they threatened me. She said it with the confidence of someone who had never encountered consequences for lying. The younger officer looked uneasy, glancing between us and her, trying to reconcile the peaceful scene with the hysterical accusation. But Miller, he kept studying us. Then his gaze settled fully on me. A small flicker of recognition softened his features. "Marcus?" I lifted a hand. "Hey, Sarge." His eyes moved to Tyler, then Ramon, then Chris. A slow blink, then the transformation understanding spreading across his face. He turned back to Linda, and his voice dropped into that patient tone cops use right before reality ruins someone's narrative. "Ma'am, do you know who these men are?" Her chin jutted up. "Dangerous individuals, clearly, and probably not even from this neighborhood." "Ma'am," he repeated, the words landing heavier this time. "They are officers with the Clearwater Springs Police Department, all four of them." The silence that followed could have smothered a fire. Linda stared at him, then at us, then back at him, her face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and pure rage. "No," she shook her head. "No, that's impossible. They are the problem here. They harassed me. They're criminals. They're—" "Ma'am," Miller interrupted. "You entered his yard without permission. This is his private property. You are trespassing." There it was, the kill shot. Her jaw dropped open. A silent scream caught somewhere inside her. The younger officer was now looking anywhere but at her, cheeks flushing with second-hand embarrassment. For a moment, I thought maybe, this was the end. Maybe she'd stammer out an excuse, slink back home, and simmer in private. But I underestimated the power of a true HOA, Karen. Her shock curdled into venom. "This is why this city is falling apart," she screeched, stepping closer to Miller. "Because of you people." She swung an arm in our direction, being hired as police officers. "This is corruption, collusion. You're all covering for each other." Miller's patience evaporated, his tone sharpened. "Ma'am, you need to leave the property." "I will not," she barked. "I am a taxpayer. I pay your salaries. I have rights. Not on someone else's property. You don't." That shut her up briefly. Her eyes flashed with a wild, frantic gleam, the kind of expression people get when they realize the story they built inside their head is collapsing in real time. Then she hissed, "This isn't over. You don't know what you've just started," and with that, she stormed out, slamming the gate behind her so hard the panels rattled. The officers stayed a few minutes longer, mostly for protocol. The rookie apologized 3 separate times. Miller gave me the kind of look that said, "Buddy, buckle up." They filed a report of a false 911 call and trespassing, but Miller warned me softly that people like Linda rarely retreat after being embarrassed. We cleaned up the backyard in somber silence. The mood had evaporated. The peaceful afternoon replaced by a knot in my stomach that only tightened as the sun dipped. Later that evening, after the guys left, I sat on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, trying to unwind when a flood of notifications hit all at once. They weren't texts. They weren't emails. They were Facebook alerts. More specifically, alerts from the neighborhood group, Maple Ridge Neighbors and Friends. My eyes narrowed. I hadn't posted in that group since moving in, but I'd been automatically added by HOA records. At the top of the feed was a brand new post, written just minutes before, by none other than Linda Carver. I opened it and felt heat crawl up my neck. Urgent neighborhood safety alert. Beware of 247 Maple Ridge Lane. That was my address, I read on, jaw clenching tighter with every sentence. She described me and my friends as a large group of aggressive, intoxicated men, possibly gang-affiliated, suspected of drug activity, verbally abusive, dangerous, a threat to the peace and safety of the community. She told the group she barely escaped with her life, that she bravely called the police, and that the officers who responded shockingly refused to act, likely because they were friends with the men. She even implied corruption. The comments were already stacking up beneath it. Oh my God, that's terrifying. Thank you for warning us, Linda. I knew something felt off about that new guy. We need a neighborhood meeting as soon as possible. This is exactly why we have an HOA. A few comments defended me. Marcus seemed nice when I met him. This sounds exaggerated, but they were drowned out by a tidal wave of fear and gossip. Then I saw the comment that changed everything. Linda, you're the HOA president. What are you going to do about this? My heart went cold. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She wasn't just overly dramatic. She wasn't just prejudiced. She held power, real, neighborhood-wide, rule-enforced power. And she had just declared war. Not just in her mind, not just in her yard, publicly, officially. Against me, I sank back against the couch, the glow of my phone illuminating the wreckage of my perfect Saturday. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. A beginning I never asked for. A beginning that would drag me and everyone I cared about into one of the ugliest HOA battles Maple Ridge had ever seen. And the worst part, I still had no idea just how far she was willing to go. The thing about a lie, especially a big one, is that it moves fast. Faster than truth, faster than logic, faster than any attempt to catch it. By the next morning, Linda's wild story had already spread through Maple Ridge Estates, like gasoline chasing a spark. I woke up to a dozen new notifications, all from people in the neighborhood group. Some were supportive, most were not. And all of them came from people I had barely met or had waved to only in passing. It was astonishing how quickly the new guy at 247 had become a symbol of fear, corruption, danger, all because one woman pointed her trembling little finger at me and spun a fantasy. But that wasn't the worst part of the morning. The worst part was the crisp white envelope taped to my front door, HOA letterhead. My stomach sank. HOA President Linda Mae Carver. Of course, I tore it open on my porch. The morning sunlight made the ink glare. The words somehow more insulting because of the official formatting. Notice of violation. Date 8:14 a.m. Address 247 Maple Ridge Lane. Resident Marcus Reed. Violation 1. Unapproved outdoor gathering. Any gathering exceeding three non-resident individuals requires advance notification to the HOA Architectural Review Committee. Violation 2. Nuisance noise infraction. A noise complaint has been filed regarding loud, disruptive, or offensive sounds on the evening of date. Violation 3. Unsightly exterior storage. Recreational equipment, folding chairs, cooler, grill accessories visible from neighboring properties constitutes a breach of community aesthetic standards. Remedy must be completed within 24 hours. Failure to comply will result in fines of $100 per day, per violation. Signed, Linda M. Carver, HOA President, Maple Ridge Estates. I stared at the letter, dumbfounded. It was like she had weaponized every petty rule in the handbook and fired them all at once. A cooler, lawn chairs, a grill. If that counted as recreational equipment, then half the neighborhood should have been fined years ago. But I knew what this was. We all did. Retaliation, punishment, the first shots of a coordinated campaign, and she hid it behind HOA policies so neatly you could almost admire the pettiness. Almost. Before responding, I texted the group chat with the guys. Marcuse. She hit me with violations. 3 of them. Tyler. She did what? Chris. Send pics. I want to frame them. Hang them in a museum labeled Karen Artifacts. Ramon. This isn't random. This is calculated. She's building a paper trail. Ramon was right. He usually was. As the unofficial law brain of our friend group, he understood patterns the rest of us didn't immediately see. And when he came over that afternoon, letter in hand, he sighed the sigh of a man who'd seen too many bureaucratic weapons disguised as neighborly concern. She's escalating, he said, tapping the paper, trying to establish a pattern of disturbance on your part. Step 1 is shaping perception. Step 2 is financial pressure. Step 3 is making you so miserable you either bend or break. And step 4, I asked. Getting you out of the neighborhood completely, he said. HOA liens, fines, maybe even legal action if she manufactures enough evidence. Tyler cracked his knuckles. I prefer step. We talk some sense into her? Yeah, that'll go great, Chris muttered. You showing up at her door is exactly the footage she wants. I looked out toward Linda's house. Curtains shifted. She was watching, always watching. The chill down my spine wasn't from fear, it was from understanding. People like Linda didn't just dislike you, they strategized around you. In my years as a cop, I'd met criminals with less long-term planning than Karen-tier HOA tyrants. By evening, the guys were gone, and I was left alone in my kitchen, rereading the violation letter like maybe the words would rearrange themselves into something reasonable. They didn't. Then, my phone buzzed. Group chat again, but instead of jokes or sarcasm, Chris sent a link. Chris, this your neighbor, Marcus. What am I looking at? Chris, public records, property info, HOA filings, social media. Tyler, you're going cyber detective mode, huh? Chris, oh, I'm just getting started. A minute later, he sent another message. Chris, guys, you'll want to sit down for this. When the three of them arrived again that night, Chris already had his laptop open on my dining table, the screen lit with tabs and documents. He rotated the screen toward me. A name glowed at the top, Ethan Carver. Age, 2-8 deceased. Arrest history. Possession with intent to distribute. Trafficking a controlled substance, opioids. Felony narcotics conspiracy. Lead arresting officer, Reed Marcus J. My stomach bottomed out. I remembered him. I remembered the case. 5 years ago, we caught Ethan distributing high-grade oxy and fentanyl across multiple neighborhoods. It wasn't a minor infraction. Kids overdosed because of product linked to his supply chain. It had been one of my hardest cases emotionally. But I never forgot the mother. The screaming, the tears, the accusations that the police had framed her, good boy, the courtroom outbursts, the glares like I had personally ripped her world apart. I never connected the face, but now I did. Linda Carver wasn't just a difficult neighbor. She wasn't just an HOA tyrant. She was the grieving, furious mother of a man I arrested, a man who died in prison 2 years later, a woman who had been quietly festering in resentment and rage, a woman who recognized my name the moment I moved in. Chris exhaled. She knew exactly who you were, Marcus. She knew from day one. But why now? Tyler asked. Why wait years and then explode over a backyard barbecue? Ramon tapped the table. Because trauma festers, grief mutates, and when a trigger comes like seeing the man she blames for her son's death having a good time, it all erupts. I leaned back, rubbing my temples. Everything made sickening sense. The stare over the fence, the trespassing, the slurs, the 911 call, the Facebook smear campaign, the HOA violations. It wasn't about noise. It wasn't about rules. It wasn't about safety. It was revenge. A quiet, calculated, unhinged vendetta. Tyler slammed his fist into his palm. So what now? We let her do this. Throw your name into the dirt? No. Ramon said firmly. This is harassment, and we're going to document everything. But we need proof, her motive, her methods, any misuse of HOA power. Chris grinned, eyes gleaming. Oh, you'll get proof? I already found some questionable bookkeeping in the HOA budget, and we still haven't checked the security footage. I started. Then my voice trailed off. Because, as if summoned by the very mention of escalation, the backyard motion light flickered on. Then, thunk. A loud metallic crash. Chris bolted to the window first. Marcus, someone's in your yard. I grabbed the flashlight and rushed to the back door. The second I pushed it open, the cold night air hit my face, and I saw him, a figure clothed entirely in black, crouched beside my outdoor AC unit. A crowbar lifted high, and then, crash, metal crumpled, sparks snapped from inside the unit. He struck again, and again. Frenzied, intentional, brutal. What the hey? I shouted, sprinting forward. The figure jerked, panicked, turned toward me, and for one split second, under the dim security light, I saw his eyes, cold, focused, angry. He dropped the crowbar, snatched a can of spray paint from his pocket, and scrawled a giant, dripping word across the siding of my house, PIG. Then he bolted. I lunged, but he was fast vaulting the back fence in a single motion, disappearing into the tree line beyond my property. Tyler cursed violently behind me. Chris scanned the ground with his phone flashlight. Ramon was already dialing 911. I stared at the word on my wall, shaking, not with fear, with fury. This wasn't harassment anymore. This was a felony, a targeted attack, a crime fueled by personal hate. And though I didn't yet know his name, I could feel the truth in my bones. Whoever that man was, he was doing this for her. For Linda. The cruiser lights cast an eerie red-blue glow across my backyard as the officers took photos, measured footprints, and documented every twisted piece of the shattered AC unit. The vandal had hit it so hard that the metal casing looked like crushed foil. Refrigerant hissed from a ruptured line, drifting into the cold night air in a thin, ghostly cloud. I stared at the damage, jaw tight, hands balled so hard my knuckles ached. The responding officers, Patrolman, Jacobs, and Nguyen, worked the scene carefully. Jacobs walked the perimeter with his flashlight, sweeping the fence line for signs of forced entry or a trail to follow. Nguyen crouched beside the footprint Chris had discovered, shining a tactical light directly onto the soft patch of earth. "This is a good print," Nguyen murmured. "Deep heel, ridged toe pattern, probably a tactical boot. Size 11, maybe 12. Chris shot me a look, called it. He wasn't bragging, he was processing. When you're a cyber specialist, every clue becomes part of a larger system in your mind, a pattern waiting to be solved. Tyler paced in wide arcs behind us, muttering curse after curse at a volume that would have broken HOA noise ordinances 100 times over. Ramon stood with his arms folded, his face carved with calm, strategic fury. He wasn't the yelling type. His anger was colder, more dangerous, the kind that solved problems with precision. Jacob straightened and approached me. "We're classifying this as felony vandalism. Damage to the AC unit alone is over $1,000. Plus graffiti and trespassing. We'll need you to file a full statement." "I'll come in," I said. "Tonight." Jacob shook his head. "Let's schedule tomorrow morning. You're too close to this." We want a clear, calm account on the record. I wasn't calm now, and we all knew it. As the officers wrapped up, I glanced again at the word painted across my siding, PIG. Thick red strokes, hasty letters, a message meant to wound. "You didn't do this," Ramon said quietly beside me. "Someone did it for her." "Yeah," I replied, voice low. "I know." We finished giving our statements. Jacobs asked if I had any idea who might have a motive. I hesitated. Protocol demanded honesty, but I had no proof yet linking Linda or anyone else. "Not yet," I answered. "But we'll find out." Jacobs left me with a firm pat on the shoulder. "Keep your porch lights on, install cameras if you haven't already, and Marcus, call us if anything else happens, even something small." I nodded. But deep down, I knew the small things had already happened. This was something else entirely. When the cruisers pulled away, the neighborhood felt too quiet, too still. Street lamps hummed faintly. The breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and somewhere across the fence line, Linda's curtains twitched ever so slightly. She was watching again, and I finally let myself feel the weight of it. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a neighborhood dispute. It wasn't an overzealous HOA president. It was a woman with a grudge, and now, an accomplice. Tyler stalked back into the yard. "We should go over there," he said. "Right now, knock on her door and end this." Ramon shot him a look. "With what evidence? You want to hand her more accusations to throw at Marcus?" Tyler's jaw flexed. He hated being logical sometimes. Chris was already crouched beside the footprint again. "We need to figure out who this guy is. Tactical boots, bigger build, athletic." He vaulted that fence like nothing. I crouched next to him. "Anything distinctive?" "Yeah," he said, angling his phone. "Look here, tiny wedge missing on the outer heel. That's not factory. It's wear and tear. And this ridge pattern here, that's a Delta Force Series 3 boot." "You're sure?" Ramon asked. Chris didn't even look up. "I'm certain." I exhaled slowly. "So we're looking for someone local, probably ex-military or private security." "Maybe both," Chris replied. "And because Linda's all about image, she's not the type to hang out with random street punks. She'd find someone she thinks is strong, professional." Tyler snorted. "Professional?" He tagged your house with spray paint. Professionally angry? Then, don't joke about this, Tyler snapped. Chris shut up instantly. We all fell silent for a few seconds, listening to the hum of the damaged AC unit sputtering its last breath. Finally, Ramon spoke. She's escalating too fast. That means she's triggered. Something about last night set her off. The 911 call humiliated her. Having Sergeant Miller correct her humiliated her even more, and posting that Facebook smear campaign probably gave her a rush of control. And control is her whole personality, Tyler muttered. Exactly. But here's the key, Ramon continued. She didn't expect the police to recognize you. She didn't expect her story to fall apart, so she had to regain ground. How? By filing those violations immediately, by turning the neighborhood against you. And now, he gestured at the ruined AC unit, by pushing the conflict from reputation damage to physical intimidation. It was meant to scare me, I said. It was meant to scare you into leaving, Ramon corrected. Or reacting, something she can use. Chris stood. And whoever did this, he's not random. Someone hired or encouraged him, someone who hates cops, someone with a connection to Ethan Carver. My stomach twisted. Donnie Hughes. The name came out before I even realized I'd said it. Chris blinked. Who's that? In Ethan's arrest record, I recalled. He had an associate, arrested with him, served 3 years, released early for cooperation. And what happened to him afterward? Ramon asked. I don't know, I admitted, but I remember Ethan yelling in court that Donnie betrayed him. Maybe Donnie blames me too. Maybe he blames everyone. Tyler cracked his neck. Where does he live? We'll check, Chris said, already typing furiously on his laptop. Give me 10 minutes. But I couldn't shake the feeling, the eyes I saw when the vandal turned. They weren't unfamiliar. They had that same furious, wounded look Ethan had in the courtroom. If Ethan had a friend still carrying that torch of resentment, it made sense. Too much sense. As Chris worked, I stepped away from the group, pacing the yard and staring at the damage. Cold autumn air wrapped around me like a warning. Somewhere, a dog barked. A car door slammed across the street. Normal sounds, but they all felt different now. My home no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a battlefield. Tyler approached slowly. You all right? No, I answered honestly. Not even close. We've got your back. You know that. I do, I said. But this isn't about proving myself innocent anymore. This is about stopping whatever she's trying to build. She's unraveling, Tyler replied. People like her don't think straight when they're losing control. She's not just losing control, I murmured, staring at the word on my wall. She's trying to take mine. Before Tyler could respond, Chris called out from the porch. Got something. We hurried over, circling around him as he turned the laptop. Photos, social media posts, employment records. At the center of the screen, Donnie Hughes, age, 34, occupation, private security officer, Ironwatch Security Services. Scrolling down revealed public Instagram posts, shirtless gym, selfies, tactical gear, rants about missing friends, and a photo of Ethan Carver captioned, Some things never get justice, rest easy, brother. Another post, I don't forget the ones responsible, not ever, and then the most telling one of all, a selfie taken at a gun range, the caption, Keeping skills sharp, can't trust anyone but yourself these days. Tyler exhaled through his nose. That's our guy. Ramon nodded. It fits, boot size. Tactical background, motive. But we need direct evidence linking him to Linda. And, to the attack tonight? I added. We'll get it, Chris said confidently. But we need a plan that's airtight. Something that exposes both of them. Tyler cracked his knuckles again. Or, we just handle this the old-fashioned way. No, I said firmly. No intimidation, no confrontation. That's what she wants. She wants a reaction, Ramon confirmed. Something she can twist into a threat or an attack. Something to weaponize. So, what do we do? Tyler asked. I inhaled deeply, letting the night air burn my lungs before speaking. We flip the script, I said. We stop reacting, we gather evidence, and we prove beyond any doubt that she's behind everything. And, how do you want to do that? Chris asked. I turned toward the house, toward the shattered AC unit, the graffiti, the violated sense of safety crawling under my skin. We bait them, I said quietly. All three men looked at me. Ramon's brows lowered. Chris nodded slowly. Tyler smiled a sharp, dangerous smile. Finally, Ramon asked, "What do you have in mind?" I glanced back toward Linda's house, her windows lit behind those ever-watchful curtains. "She's obsessed with control," I said. "So, we make her believe she's losing it, and we let her and Donnie reveal everything themselves. Because people like Linda always keep talking, and people like Donnie always slip, we just had to make sure we were listening." We spent the next morning buried in notes, digital files, and cups of terrible gas station coffee, the kind that tastes like burnt rubber but keeps you awake long enough to make questionable decisions. Chris had barely slept. His eyes were red, his hair a mess, but his brain was firing on all cylinders. He spread spreadsheets and printouts across my dining table like a detective in a crime thriller, strings and pins only missing because he preferred software. Tyler sat with his arms crossed, watching the screens with restless energy. Ramon leaned against the kitchen counter, calmly flipping through the HOA covenant booklet that might as well have been written in ancient Sanskrit. Meanwhile, I paced. The vandalism, the graffiti, the look in Linda's eyes when she smiled through my window, it all tightened inside my chest like a vice. I wasn't just dealing with a petty neighbor anymore. This was a coordinated attack fueled by old grief, resentment, and whatever twisted logic she'd built inside her head. "All right," Chris said suddenly, tapping his keyboard. "I've been reviewing Donnie's digital footprint and something sticks out," Tyler snorted. "His whole life sticks out," Guy screams. "I peaked in high school." "No," Chris said, turning the laptop toward us. "Look at this. It was a time-stamped record, a geotagged photo from Donnie's private security job. The location was a long stretch of suburban streets near Maple Ridge Estates. He worked a patrol shift the night before the vandalism," Chris said. "Look at the time. He clocked out at 10:41 p.m., and the vandal hit around 11:00, I muttered. "It's tight, but possible," Ramon said, "especially if he drove straight here." Tyler leaned forward. "What else you got?" Chris flipped to a different tab, phone activity logs, obtained through methods I didn't ask about because plausible deniability is a beautiful thing. "This is weird," he said. "Between 8 p.m. and midnight, Donnie made one call." "To who?" I asked. Chris clicked. A single name appeared. "Linda Carver." Tyler let out a low whistle. "Well, there's your smoking gun." "Not enough," Ramon said immediately. A phone call could mean anything. She could claim it was about neighborhood safety, or asking about security options, or some mundane crap. He was right. We needed something undeniable, something even Linda couldn't lie around. Which brought us back to the plan. To bait them, Chris said. "We need to make Linda think she's losing control of the narrative, that the police are taking your side, that you're gathering evidence, and that her slander's falling apart. And then she panics." "I finished, and makes mistakes," Ramon said. "And calls Donnie," Tyler added with a grin. "To whine, or scream, or confess, that's the goal," Chris agreed. "If she reaches out to him again, we catch it." I took a long breath. "So, how do we get her to reach out?" Tyler grinned. "We poke the dragon." That afternoon, I showered, put on clean clothes, and walked out onto my porch with a folder in my hand. It wasn't real, just blank printer paper, but it looked official enough. And more importantly, Linda was watching. She always was. Her curtain shifted. She froze behind the glass like a startled owl. I met her gaze, didn't smile, didn't wave, just walked to my car, slid the folder onto the passenger seat, and drove away. I didn't need to go far. I just circled the neighborhood, let people see me driving, then parked at the police station for 20 minutes. When I came back, Linda's curtains fluttered again. Good. Poking the dragon had begun. Inside, Chris monitored everything remotely. "She logged into Facebook twice since you left," he said. "Made 2 draft posts but didn't publish. Her heart rate is spiking." "Her heart rate?" Tyler frowned. Chris stuck out his chin proudly. "She uses a cheap off-brand smartwatch. The app syncs to her tablet, and her tablet—" Yeah, we know," Tyler grumbled. "You hacked it? Don't say it, don't imply it, don't acknowledge it," I warned. "Right," Chris said. "I analyzed it." We all snorted. After sunset, we launched Phase 2. I walked straight to Linda's house, not onto her property, not past her walkway, just the sidewalk. Well within the law, and well within her view, She stood at her door before I even knocked, filming me on her phone. "What do you want?" she snapped. "Just to let you know," I said in my calmest voice. "The investigation into last night is progressing faster than you probably expected." Her nostrils flared. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Of course," I said with a polite nod. "But I thought you should hear this directly. The officers have a strong lead, and they're following it hard." Her eyes twitched. What lead?" "We'll talk more at the HOA meeting," I said. "It might be the last chance for you to tell the truth before other people tell it for you." Her jaw dropped. She stuttered. I have nothing to hide." "Then you'll be fine," I replied. "Have a wonderful night." As I walked away, I could feel her panic rising like heat from asphalt. The moment I stepped through my front door, Chris shouted from the living room, "She's moving, tablets active." We gathered around the laptop. At first, only the faint sounds of her house clinking dishes, muttering, pacing, then typing, fast, frantic typing, then a familiar sound, the call screen connecting. A man answered, rough, irritated. "Why are you calling me, Donnie?" Linda's voice came through sharp and breathless. "We have a problem?" "We've had a problem," Donnie growled. "Your little cop neighbor. He knows," she hissed. "He came to my door. He looked at me like he had proof. You told me he couldn't prove anything. He's bluffing, or maybe he has something. He went to the police station today. He's trying to pin the whole thing on me, and you." There was a long silence. Then Donnie's voice. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. But he might have evidence. You need to be careful." "You need to," Donnie exploded. "Careful, careful. You said this would be easy. Some stupid HOA drama. You said no one would look twice. Nobody would have if you hadn't spray-painted his house," she snapped. "You told me to. You said we had to scare him off. You said we had to make him regret what he did to Ethan." I felt the room freeze. Every breath stopped. And then Donnie said the words that sealed both their fates. "I smashed his AC unit because you paid me to. I did exactly what you wanted. If I go down, you're going down with me." Silence. Her voice came out tiny. "Don't say that. Don't." "I mean it," Donnie snarled. "I kept my promise for Ethan, but I'm not taking the fall for you. Not again." The call ended. The room was dead silent. Then Chris leaned back slowly and whispered, "We got them." That night, none of us slept. Not because we were afraid, but because we were ready. The HOA meeting was the next day, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I could breathe. Tomorrow, everything changed. Tomorrow, she finally faced the truth. Tomorrow, the entire neighborhood would hear exactly who their HOA president really was. The next 24 hours felt both impossibly long and terrifyingly short. Every minute ticked by with the same heavy tension you feel right before a major raid, the sense that something enormous was about to break, one way or another. But this time, it wasn't a criminal hideout, it wasn't an armed standoff, it was a beige community clubhouse with a coffee table, folding chairs, and a projector that never worked. Honestly, part of me preferred the armed standoff. By late afternoon, neighbors began trickling toward the clubhouse in small, murmuring groups. Some were dressed casually, others in stiff, HOA meeting formality khakis, tucked shirts, clipboards. The older residents shuffled in with the weary expressions of people who had endured decades of suburban politics. Younger couples looked curious, uneasy, like they sensed tonight wasn't going to be routine. And it wasn't. Not tonight, not after everything. Chris, Tyler, and Ramon arrived with me, forming a wall of calm, silent support. We entered the clubhouse quietly, taking seats in the back row. Even from here, I could see the tension in the room, heads turning, whispers forming, people nudging each other as they recognized me. The dangerous man from 124 Willowcrest Lane, the gang leader, the drug dealer impersonating a cop. Linda had painted me as a monster, and some had believed her. But tonight, they would finally hear the truth. At the front of the room, behind a cheap fold-out table, sat the HOA board, an elderly treasurer who looked like he wanted to melt into the carpet, a middle-aged secretary pretending to shuffle papers meaningfully, and in the center, Linda Carver. Her hair was pulled back so tight I could see the strain in her forehead. She wore a floral blouse and a pearl necklace, trying to project authority and dignity, but her hands trembled when she lifted her water bottle. Her eyes kept darting around the room, first at me, then at the door, then at the stack of HOA documents in front of her. She was unraveling, and she knew it. At precisely 6:00 p.m., she tapped her clipboard with a pen. "Let's begin," she said, her voice strained but clipped, like she was forcing confidence through tight teeth. "Welcome, everyone, to the Maple Ridge Estates quarterly meeting." Her voice quivered slightly at the edges. I could tell she hadn't slept. Neither had I. She went through the usual formalities: first attendance, reading last month's minutes, a brief summary of maintenance expenses. Normally, this would have taken 20 minutes with neighbors chiming in about weeds or trash, pickup or mailbox paint colors. But tonight, the room was silent. Everyone was waiting. Everyone knew why they were here, finally. She cleared her throat and said, "If there is no further old business, we can move on to new." "Actually," a voice said. It was Ramon, calm, firm, unshakable. The room turned. Linda stiffened. "New business will only be addressed after—" "No," Ramon said. "This needs to be addressed now." Mike, who had joined us quietly and now stepped forward, walked to the aisle and faced the board. Chris opened his laptop, resting it on his knees. Tyler leaned back, crossing his arms like he was settling in for a show. "Mrs. Carver," Mike said, his voice strong and steady, "we need to discuss the conduct of the HOA president." A ripple of murmurs echoed across the room. Linda's face drained of color. "Excuse me. You heard me," Mike replied. "Your behavior regarding a certain resident has come under serious scrutiny." "Are you referring?" Linda snapped. "To the violent criminal who has been threatening me? Yes, we absolutely need to discuss." "Stop," Mike said sharply. The room froze. Linda blinked rapidly. I beg your pardon." "No," Mike said. "You don't get to spin this anymore." He looked at the audience. "My name is Michael Carter. I'm an attorney, and I am here representing Marcus Hale, your neighbor at 124 Willowcrest." People gasped. I stood slowly, meeting the eyes of the neighbors who had glared at me for weeks. Some looked embarrassed, some nervous, a few sympathetic. "As many of you know," Mike continued, "there have been serious accusations circulating online, in HOA notices, and even via emergency services, claiming that Marcus and his friends behaved aggressively, illegally, and dangerously." Linda's shoulders squared. She lifted her chin. "He did," she declared. "He and his gang threatened me in my own neighborhood. They—" "No," Mike said again. "He didn't." He gestured to me. "Marcus Hale is a police officer, a decorated one. So, are his 3 friends?" Gasps, jaw drops, silence thick enough to choke on. Even the treasurer's pen froze mid-air. Linda's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for oxygen. Mike stepped closer to the board table, dropping a stack of papers onto it. "This," he said, "is the official record of the false 911 call Mrs. Carver made, in which she knowingly reported fabricated claims." "That's a lie!" Linda shrieked. He threatened me. Did he?" Mike asked. "Or did you trespass onto his property? Did you open his gate without permission? Did you accuse 4 off-duty officers of being criminals because they were simply talking in the backyard?" The murmurs grew louder. Neighbors were looking at her differently now. She felt it. Her face flushed red, then white, then an ugly shade of purple. I was protecting the neighborhood," she insisted. "Someone had to. And what about this?" Mike lifted another sheet. "A series of HOA violation letters issued without basis. Harassment disguised as policy enforcement." "That was my duty," she snapped. "And this?" he asked, pulling out another paper. "Public posts on Facebook accusing Marcus of being a gang member, a drug dealer, and a threat to children." She clenched her jaw. Sweat beaded at her temples. "You have no proof." "I do," Mike replied calmly. "And so does everyone here. You posted it publicly." The room buzzed again, but Mike wasn't done. "Now," he said, lowering his voice, "let's address the part you hoped would never come to light." Chris tapped a button on his keyboard. A speaker on his lap emitted a soft crackle. Linda froze. "Don't," she whispered, but it was already too late. Donnie's voice filled the room. "I smashed his AC unit because you paid me to." Someone gasped so loudly the entire room jolted. On the recording, Linda's frantic voice replied, "You said we had to scare him off. You said we had to make him regret what he did to Ethan." Another gasp. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Donnie again, "If I go down, you're going down with me." The recording ended. Silence. a deep, devastating silence. Then Linda collapsed back into her chair, shaking her head violently. No, no, you tricked me. You manipulated. This is taken out of context. He's lying. You don't understand, But no one listened. The spell she'd cast over this neighborhood shattered, and the truth poured out like sunlight through broken glass. Ramon stepped forward. Mrs. Carver, you conspired with a known associate of your late son to attack a police officer. You abused your authority as HOA president. You embezzled HOA funds to pay him, and you terrorized this community, Tyler added. And you almost ruined my friend's life. The treasurer stood shakily. Mrs. Carver, is this true? She stared at nothing. The fight drained from her. Her hands trembled as she tried to speak, but no words came out, only hushed, incoherent panic. And that was the moment Detective Henderson stepped forward. He hadn't said a word until now. Mrs. Carver, he said gently, I need you to come with me. Her head snapped up. No. Please, this is all a mistake. I only wanted, but he guided her toward the door. Uniformed officers entered quietly from outside. Linda's neighbors turned away from her as she passed, some in disgust, some in pity, many in stunned disbelief. She didn't leave the clubhouse as an HOA president. She left as a criminal, a broken, defeated one. As the doors closed behind her, the entire room exhaled, some in relief, some in shock. I remained still, not triumphant, not smug, just tired. Finally, the treasurer cleared his throat. Mr. Hale, on behalf of the neighborhood, we're so sorry. I nodded, emotion tightening my throat. It's okay, truly, but let's fix things from here. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, people nodded back. Not in fear, not in suspicion, but in understanding. The war was over, and the truth had finally won. The clubhouse emptied out slowly, the way people file out of a church after a shocking sermon, quiet, uneasy, humbled. Neighbors avoided eye contact at first, not out of hostility this time, but out of embarrassment. Some walked in pairs, whispering to each other in tones too soft to make out. Others lingered awkwardly, glancing over their shoulders at the doors where the officers had escorted Linda away. It was over, but the shock was still settling like dust after an explosion. Chris closed his laptop quietly, almost reverently, like he'd just finished defusing a bomb. Tyler stretched his neck and arms, as if releasing weeks of tension from his muscles. Ramon let out a long breath, measured, controlled, the exhale of a man who had been prepared for the worst and was relieved to find the world still standing. I sank into a folding chair, and only then did I notice how exhausted I was, not physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. A deep kind of fatigue that came from fighting a battle you didn't choose, couldn't avoid, and had no roadmap for. A few neighbors cautiously approached. The first was an older man, maybe in his 70s, wearing neatly pressed slacks and a windbreaker. He had been one of the loudest voices on the Neighborhood Alliance page, posting comments like, "These kinds of people don't belong here," and "Why hasn't someone done something?" Now he stood in front of me with his hat crumpled in his hands. "Mr. Hale," he said, his voice wavering, I owe you an apology, a big one." I looked him in the eye. "You didn't know the whole story." "Still," he said, hanging his head, "that doesn't excuse the way I behaved. I believed her because, well, she always sounded so sure of herself, and I guess I wanted to believe the worst because it was easier than thinking she was lying." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." I shook his hand. "Thank you. That means a lot." A small crowd gathered after him. Neighbors who had avoided me for weeks looked at me with suspicion, crossed the street when I walked by. One by one, they apologized, offered sympathetic words, asked if there was anything they could do. The shift was overwhelming. It didn't erase the past, but it did something else. It restored something I didn't even realize I'd lost: trust. By the time the crowd dispersed, the clubhouse was nearly empty, save for the board members who remained behind, shell-shocked, ashamed, and suddenly responsible for a community without its tyrant at the helm. Chris nudged me. "Well," he said with a crooked grin, "that was one hell of a PowerPoint presentation." Tyler barked a laugh. Ramon smirked. I chuckled, shaking my head. Only my friends could turn the darkest weeks of my life into something we could eventually laugh about. We walked out of the clubhouse together, stepping into the cool night air. The sky was a deep, rich navy, stars sharp and bright overhead. It felt like the first time I'd really looked at the sky in weeks. Feels lighter, Ramon said quietly. It does, I agreed. But as we reached my house, I stopped on the sidewalk. The word pig was gone, scrubbed off, repainted over, but I could still feel where it had been. The AC unit had been replaced with a new model, humming perfectly. The grass had grown back where the footprint once was. The camera we'd installed blinked its little red LED in steady rhythm. Everything looked normal, but normal had been shattered. You holding up? Ramon asked gently. Honestly, I said, I'm still working through it. That's fair, he replied. Anyone would. We went inside, and for the first time in weeks, the house didn't feel hostile or watched or tainted. It felt like home again. We sat around the kitchen table, no beers, no jokes, just 4 friends decompressing after a war none of us saw coming. Do you think she'll actually serve the full sentence? Tyler asked. Probably, I said. Embezzlement, conspiracy, vandalism, filing false reports. That's not nothing, and the recording ties it all together. Ramon nodded solemnly. She won't be back here anytime soon. Chris sipped water thoughtfully. Donnie. He cut a deal, I said. Named her as the mastermind. He'll get reduced time. Coward, Tyler muttered. Desperate, Ramon corrected. Cowards run. Desperate men cling to the sinking ship and hope someone else drowns first. That was exactly what Donnie had done. And Linda had sunk herself. Eventually, the conversation slowed. Fatigue settled over us like a blanket. The adrenaline had finally burned off. We said our goodnights one by one. When the door closed behind the last of them, I stood alone in my living room. Silence, stillness, peace. It felt fragile, but real. The following weeks passed with an ease I couldn't have imagined before. The HOA board held emergency elections. A new president, a quiet, soft-spoken retired schoolteacher named Eleanor took over. She personally came to my house with homemade cookies and a written apology signed by every board member. The smear posts vanished from the neighborhood page, replaced by messages of support, community cleanup announcements, and more than one neighbor asking whether the police department was hiring because we could use more good officers around here. Kids played street hockey again, dogs barked at squirrels, people waved when I drove by. It felt like waking up from a nightmare and rediscovering the world was safe. Not perfect, but safe. My career recovered, too. The internal affairs complaint was dismissed with prejudice, meaning permanently, unequivocally, and with a clear record showing her accusations were fabricated. My captain shook my hand and told me the department stood behind me. I even got an unofficial apology from the rookie officer who'd shown up that first day. Hand hovering near his sidearm, he said he'd learned more from this incident than he could have from a year of academy lectures. Life moved forward. So did I. A month after the HOA meeting, my friends came over again. Same chairs, same grill, same cooler, and yet everything was different. When we sat down this time, no one checked the fences. No one tensed at distant sirens. No one worried about being filmed through curtains. We just breathed, talked, laughed, lived. At sunset, the sky burned orange and violet across the horizon. I leaned back, beer in hand, and looked at the 3 men who had stood beside me through hell. Feels good to have the backyard back, Tyler said, eyes half closed in the fading light. Feels like we earned it, Chris replied. We did, Ramon said simply. I nodded. We sat there until the stars were bright, the grill cold, and the air filled with the soothing hum of night insects. And as I looked around at my reclaimed sanctuary, I understood something important. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. Peace is knowing you have the right people beside you when conflict comes. Darkness will always exist, but so will the light we choose to bring into it. And that night, with my brothers beside me and the soft glow of porch lights around us, I felt the light again. I felt whole. If there's one thing this entire ordeal taught me, it's this. Your peace is sacred, and there will always be people who try to take it from you. Sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of ignorance, and sometimes, like Linda, out of bitterness so deep it becomes poison. But you don't have to fight those battles alone. Stand with people who ground you, who protect you, who tell you the truth, even when it's hard. Because the right friends aren't just company, they're armor. And remember, power built on lies always collapses. Truth might take longer, might require patience and resilience, but it always wins in the end. If you've ever dealt with a nightmare neighbor, a power-hungry HOA, or someone who tried to tear you down for reasons you'll never understand, share your story in the comments. You're not alone. And if you enjoyed this journey, hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable HOA stories are coming, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's next.